If you're watching this and you're sick of being overweight, not because you want to be overweight, it's just you keep getting stuck. You keep falling off, you keep starting and stopping. In this video, not only am I going to share with you why you're having such a hard time losing weight, but I'm also going to break down how to fix it. So let's first talk about the whole problem. So this is our weight loss journey. So everybody starts at the same place. And then we'll call this down at the bottom, we'll call this the finish line. And it's really not the finish line. And the reason it's not the finish line because it actually goes on after that. But what happens at this mark right here, this is when you figured it out. This is when it becomes fun. This is when it becomes exciting because you understand the process. Now, here's the thing about the process. Everybody starts at the same spot. And when you start, you suck. You're just not good at it. Nobody's good at anything when they first started. You probably remember when you first started to drive a car, you were horrible at it. You had to worry about pressing the gas and the brake and looking in the rearview mirror. You were overwhelmed by all that. But now you're on the phone, you're shooting a text message, you're driving. You don't have to think about any of that because you became proficient at it. So when you start, not only do you suck at it, what happens is at the very beginning, there is tons and tons of problems that you're going to run into. There's tons and tons of situations and things that you're going to face that you have absolutely no idea how to handle. And you can see how at the top, it's very broad. And it's very broad because you don't even know where to start. You know, over here, you have keto. And over here, you got intermittent fasting. And over here, you got low carbs. And over here, you got CrossFit. You have all of these different ways, different models, these different systems that you can use. You don't even know what system to use. And then once you start, you immediately start facing these problems. Now, since you're just starting on your journey, you don't understand that these problems, this is normal. So I remember being younger playing Super Mario Brothers, and on level 1, first of all, it was a trick just learning how to get to the end. And then when you get to the end, you find out there's this big, huge, scary boss that you face that you have to figure out how to beat. Now, it usually takes you a couple tries to learn, but what happens when you don't beat the boss? You don't just get to fight the boss again. You got to start all over again back at the beginning of the level. In this top part, honestly, this is where most people get stuck. This is where most people start and stop because there's so many problems that they face. There's so many hard situations that they don't know how to get over, and they think that it's them, and really it's not them, it's just that's part of the process. Here's the cool thing about the process. As you start moving down, problems not only become less, but they become not as serious. So even though at the very, very bottom, there's still problems that you're going to face, these problems are not hindering you from making progress. These problems, these situations, these things that you're going to handle, they're not going to have you start completely over. Whereas up here, if you face a problem right here, you're going to say, oh, well, this isn't working. Let me go do something else. And then you start again, go through the whole process. Oh, this isn't working. It's not working. Let me do something else. And you start over. So you get caught in this endless cycle. And this is where 90% of people never make it out this first step because they don't understand this is part of the process. They quit too soon. Okay, so if we know this is what the process is, and when you get here, I'll call it the finish line, and then now what happens here is you get into what I like to call flow state. So what happens in flow state is you understand the process. How would you like to get in a flow state? How would you like me to break this down so you don't get stuck in this endless cycle of frustration and just anxiety and just overwhelmed, disgust in yourself because you keep starting over and you can't figure out why you're not motivated to get out of bed? How many of you guys would like for me to answer, like give you a framework? I'm gonna give you 2 frameworks to get you out of this stage. The first framework I'm gonna give you is called Occam's Razor. And what Occam's Razor says, it says simple solutions are often the best. Okay, cool. So if we know simple solutions are always the best, how can we take all of this confusion that's up here, all this uncertainty that's up here, and how can we make that certain? Okay, well, if we boil it down to the least common denominator, you have inputs, and then you have outputs. And out of inputs and outputs, the one you have control over is inputs. So that would be, these are the things you do, and because you do these things, those lead to these things. Most people do this wrong. They focus on the outputs. They put all their energy and focus on the outputs, meaning the only way that they can win the game that they're playing is if they step on the scale and if the scale has went down. And if the scale hasn't went down, they consider that a loss. Well, even if you're doing everything right, even if you had the greatest week ever, even if you ate everything you were supposed to, you slept like you were supposed to, you exercised like you're supposed to, there's still a chance you can step on the scale and it's not gonna produce a result that in your head you're gonna be happy with. So you lost. Whereas if we say we're not gonna play that game, we're not gonna worry about the outputs, we'll let the outputs control themselves. What we're gonna focus on is our inputs. Okay, cool. Well, if we know we're gonna focus on our inputs, again, using Occam's Razor, what we're then gonna use is we're gonna use the Pareto principle, or otherwise known as the 80-20 rule. So what the 80-20 rule says is 20% of the work you do is gonna produce 80% of the results. Okay, so if we're looking at only inputs and we know that 20% of what we do, a small amount of what we do, is gonna give us the biggest yield, well then we're gonna only focus on the 20%. So now we're really locked in. So you're probably wondering, Tywin, well, what is the 20% we focus on? Well, I call that 20% MPN. So what MPN stands for is mental, physical, and nourishment. Mental, physical, nourishment. Those are the only things we're gonna focus on. So we're gonna focus on mentally what we listen to, what we hear, our thoughts, physically how we move our body, and then nutrition that we put in our body. These are the only things we're focusing on, nothing else. So if we apply these principles, we're only controlling inputs, that's all we can control, and then we break down those to the 80-20 rule, and out of that, we're using our MPNs. That is gonna get you to here, which gets you into flow state. And once you're in flow state, this becomes easy. Losing weight becomes easy. No different from driving a car. It's easy, it's not hard. Someone lied to you. You bought into the excuse because you got stuck up here that losing weight was hard. You bought into the excuse that you could never get the results that are down here. Well, that's a lie. That's a story you told yourself, and you can continue buying that same story, or you can apply the 2 frameworks that I gave you and crush it. You can apply the 2 frameworks I gave you and get in the absolute best shape of your life. But that's up to you. Anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you got some value. I'll catch you guys on the next one.